Well, big news for Mariner fans. We've been talking about it, Dave, and it's official now. Josh Naylor is going to be a Mariner for the next 5 seasons at least, and that's an early Christmas present for a lot of us out here. And a man who was a huge part of making it happen is with us now on the Emerald Queen Casino Sportsbook Hotline. He is your Mariners General Manager, Justin Hollander, is with us. How are you, buddy?
I'm great. Great day for us.
It is a great day, and let me just as much as you can tell the listeners about what went into this, because this was fast. This was I don't even know if Josh had another conversation with another team. Did he even entertain free agency really? Because you guys got this done pretty quickly, much to the surprise of not just local media, but it seems like national media as well.
Yeah, I mean, you have to ask him about that. I'm certain they had some conversations. My understanding, at least from them, was that this was his priority. And, we were very honest with him about him being our priority. And I think we showed it through our actions, not just through our words. And that resonated for everybody. This is, something that Jerry said when we started out and something that I sort of repeated and it really resonated with me. Don't be stupid. Like if you have a player who fits your clubhouse, fits your team really well, like perfectly is probably the best way of saying it, wants to be here, you want him here, why wait? Why wait until December? Why wait until the winter meetings? Just go out and put your best foot forward early on and show him that you mean it when you say it, that you're our number one priority. We want you to be here. Don't be stupid. And that resonated through my head quite a bit over the last couple of weeks as we were sort of winding down from the unfortunate end to the season and ramping up into what 26 and 27, 28 and 29 and 2030 might look like. And Josh was going to be an important thing for us to get done as soon as we could.
Well, Justin, congratulations on a great year and then signing Naylor. This might be a tough question, maybe not fair, but what's the best thing that he brings to this team? We can see all the stats, but what about some of the other X factors about Josh Naylor?
He's a winner. I don't know if I can say this on the air. He's kind of a badass. Like, he's competitive. He's got grit. He pushes other people to give it their all, to never quit. He brings an edge and a personality. And I think all those things create an environment that's really special. And I also think his feel for the game, as we've talked about it a lot, his baseball intelligence, his IQ, that's something that can spread throughout a clubhouse. When he's noticing things, he can share them with the group. It's important for us to have players like Josh and Julio and Cal and JP as we start incorporating the next wave of young prospects. There has to be in-person clubhouse guides for the young players to come up. It's really hard to come to the big leagues and be your best self. It's especially hard when you don't have really good veteran players around them. We feel like we have a great core that's going to allow young players to onboard into the big leagues faster than ever.
Justin, I was saying yesterday when the news came out that to me this sent a message to the fan base, to the rest of the league, to that clubhouse that, you just touched on it. Josh is he is driven. That is a guy. I mean, everybody in that clubhouse wants to win, right? But he's intense about winning, and I don't think that, I know money is there, and he could have had money anywhere. To me, that sent a message, him saying, you know what, I believe I can win here. This tells me I can win here because that's my priority. So did he talk to you about the future, about, hey, what are your guys' plans? How do you plan to attack the offseason? Was that ever part of the conversation with him?
Yeah, we had Josh referenced this at our press conference today. We had a meeting with Josh right after the season. Jerry and I flew to Arizona for the day, had lunch with him and his wife and his agent, and the baby Onyx was there, but didn't say a peep the whole time. And we talked. We just talked about, Josh's experiences growing up playing, how he got to where he is today, time on different clubs and what that was like. And then we talked for a long time about the Mariners. And, typically when you have these meetings, the focus is a lot on the present club. And there was a ton of talk about that. And I give Josh a ton of credit. He had done a lot of homework on our organization, not just on his teammates today, but on the guys he thought might be his teammates in 26 or 27 or 28, our young players. and had a lot of questions about them, wanting to get to learn more about them. He'd done a video breakdown on a lot of them and had full write-ups on what he liked about them. It was really impressive. I was blown away. We could have sat for hours and hours longer. I think it was 4 hours of a meeting that could have gone 6 or 7 or 8. And the conversation was very easy, and everybody at the table seemed focused on the same thing, which is Josh being with the Mariners and winning a World Series. And not just, we had a great year in 2025 and that was our apex, but really, how do we carry this forward? And it was a very impressive presentation by him of what was important to him. And it was, I left and walked away from the meeting thinking we have to get this guy signed. He fits so well.
Wow. Hey, for you, Justin, it's a great year, obviously, and everybody was disappointed in the end, but it was an amazing year. How long did it take you to go, okay, let's get to work on 2026?
I'm sort of doing both right now. I'm still mourning 25. I'm not over it yet, but also the next season calls and I can't unring the bell on last season. I can't make one more roster move or influence one decision or find a way to help the guys get the last night out. That's gone. So trying to not relive it every day. Still disappointed. I think we all are, but really excited about the future. I have to feel like we can do a lot with the group that we have to help them get better, because I think our foundation is as good as anybody in baseball. So over the last 2 weeks or so, I've really started to try and put 25 behind us and focus on exclusively on 26. And I think going to the general managers meetings and sitting with your colleagues and talking about the team and where you want to improve it over the last week, doing that in Vegas was a good thing for all of us to really bury 25 and put it behind us.
How much, Justin, would you say the I don't know if the philosophy, the approach perhaps of ownership may have shifted in a good way based on the success of last year? I mean, being 8 outs away from the first World Series, to me, just you got such a close sniff of what it could be, and you saw this city explode. You saw the support and the mania that followed this team, and I'm wondering if that led to this signing happening as quickly as it did. B, it's the biggest signing since Jerry's been here. I mean, Mitch Garver had the biggest free agent signing prior to that, 2 years, $24 million. So this represents obviously a big step in another direction. Has it shifted the approach perhaps of ownership and saying, you know what, we're right there. Let's get this? Or do you feel like, no, this is business as usual?
I feel like this is more business as usual. I don't really feel like ownership's approach has shifted. We had signed Robbie Ray to a 9-figure deal after the 21 season, I believe. We traded for and extended Luis Castillo in 22 to a 9-figure deal. Obviously, long deals for Cal and Julio. I think the biggest thing that helped in terms of the timing with Josh from an ownership perspective is that we knew the player. He'd been here. So the vetting that we needed to do, both from a club front office baseball perspective and from an ownership, big picture, how's he fit in our community perspective, a lot of those boxes were already checked. That always makes it easier when you know someone, when you spent time with them. But I really don't think ownership's approach has changed at all. I think we're all focused on how do we win the World Series next year. This year we got closer than ever. Let's find a way to actually get it across the line this year.
What's sort of the next priority for you, Justin, as you go through the off season? I know you can look at a lot of different things, but is there one priority that stands out that you need to address?
Yeah, it's a good question. There's not an easy answer for that because, the off season doesn't always unfold in sort of a linear, you get to check your boxes in the order that you want to check them. We would like to add another bat to the club, at least one, if we can do that. We've talked pretty openly about, being interested in a reunion with Jorge Polanco and a reunion with Geno Suarez. Can we make that happen? That would be great if we could. And then I think the need for pitching depth, specifically in the bullpen, is something that we want to accomplish over the course of the next several months. And that could come in a bunch of different shapes and sizes. It could come in, young guys like Robinson Ortiz, who we just traded for over the weekend, in a trade that's maybe a little of the smaller variety. It could come in high leverage guys signed by a free agency or by trade. It could also come with, starting pitching depth that you acquire via trade that has options to help build out your depth in case you have more injuries like we did this previous season. So a lot of different things we want to accomplish in the offseason. This was by far the the biggest one that we needed to get done and hope to get done quickly, and really relieved that we did.
When you look at the roster, the way it ended the season, as it was constructed, it, came up just a bit shy, obviously, as we're all well aware. Do you feel like if you had that roster from day one to the end of the season, we've got enough? Or do you feel like, you know what, we're right there, but we need that, but we need to add a little bit more to that in order to get over the hump?
I probably never will feel like the former, which is that we have enough for good. I think that would lead to complacency in some ways, and sort of some ownership bias that we just believe in our players so much. We think that if everything goes right, we have enough. That's probably not a great way to look at things. I do feel like the roster that we had at the end of the year was as talented as any team in the American League, and obviously we're right there. A great 5-game series that we were able to win, and a gut-wrenching 7-game series that unfortunately lost, and feel like we were right there. But there's things we want to do to help the club, maybe be more well-rounded, more complete for 162 games than it was this past season. And those are the things I just touched on. Another bat, at least one, and bullpen depth. I think we pushed our leverage relievers in particular pretty hard at the end of the season, and adding another guy to that mix would be really, critical for us this offseason.
Justin, in 2025 just seemed like the rotation, it was just bad luck, as far as injuries and everything. Now that the season's over, how do you view the rotation from last year and going forward?
Yeah, those guys battled a lot last year, physical battles and, sort of the emotional battles of a lot of them dealing with injuries for the first time in their lives. George really never has missed time in the regular season with an injury. Logan's really never missed time in the major league season for an injury. Bryce, same thing. Bryce has been healthy since the day we drafted him. So to have those guys go through bumps and bruises, and sometimes a little more than that, I think took a toll on them. They felt frustrated. They couldn't help the team like they wanted to. And then there's a natural acclimation period, onboarding period, when you come off an injury and you haven't pitched at this level to get going again. And I think it took them all a little bit of time. I feel confident that we didn't see the best of this group in 2025. And I think they know that. And the things that they can control, my guess is they're going to get after it pretty hard this offseason and look to come in and get back to the 2022, 23, 24 version of this group, which was one of the best in baseball, if not the best.
Hey, Justin, how comfortable are you? And I know spring training will determine a lot of how you feel about it, but just going into it as in this conversation now, looking at your infield and going, okay, you got potentially a lot of youth in there. I mean, if we'll see what happens with Polanco, but you potentially have Cole Young, Ryan Bliss there, or the combo of the two, one of the two, and then obviously Williamson at third if Geno doesn't come back. Are you comfortable having those? I won't say completely unproven, but they haven't had a full season under their belt. Could you have two young guys in the lineup and feel okay about it, or do you feel like we would like to have a little more veteran leadership in that lineup, and maybe have one young guy and see how it goes? How do you feel about youth sort of peppering the lineup?
I think youth peppering the lineup is important. It doesn't mean that we don't want to add more certain, one or two spots in the lineup that are occupied by younger players, finding their way, sort of, climbing up the ladder on their major league career. I think that's important for the way we want to operate to do that. I think it gives us the best upside that we can have to figure out what guys can do, let them come to the big leagues, maybe fail a little bit, find their stride, let the league adjust back to them and them adjust back to them. It takes a little while for guys to stabilize. I think it's important for us to give those guys enough runway to do that, but I don't want to forsake, the floor of the team to provide upside for young players. So it's a balance, and that's something that we talk about all the time. Would love to continue to add, both veteran leadership on the field and just, more certain production than you typically get from players in their early 20s on the field. Those are things that, we're working towards this offseason. But if the season started today, I wouldn't be nervous at all about Ben Williamson running out to third base, Cole Young running out to second base. Those guys are wired the right way. They're really talented. If that's how we end up rolling it out, I'll be really confident about what they bring every day.
Justin, what's a guy that when you look back on, and I know you're probably not monitoring the media constantly, but somebody in 2025 that's sort of a unsung hero that you think didn't get talked about enough?
Wow, that's a great question. Gabe Spire did a ton for us this year, and really, really happy for Gabe. He put the work in. Really, I could cite a bunch of guys in the bullpen. With the way Matt Brash bounced back from Tommy John, it's the first time he's ever really had an injury of significance in his career, and to come back on or ahead of schedule and pick right back up where he left off was really impressive to see. Gabe battled injuries in 24 and had the best year of his career in 25, a really dominant setup guy versus lefties and righties. Edward Bizardo had the best year of his career by far and really established himself as a legit late inning option for us. Really happy for all those guys. Carlos Vargas was fighting for a job in spring training and got some critical late inning outs, particularly early in the season before Matt came back. So those guys are all unsung heroes. And then I would be remiss if I didn't throw some flowers Dom Canzone's way. He'd been sent to AAA. Robles had gotten hurt. We claimed Leody Taveras on waivers, and unfortunately that didn't work the way we had hoped. And we decided to give Dom a shot, and he took it and ran with it. Had like an 850 OPS for the last couple months of the season. Got some really big hits for us. And really brought a different element to the latter third of our lineup. So all of those guys, really unsung heroes and guys that we're going to be counting on going forward.
Justin, are we not giving enough attention to some of the non-players that have moved on? I mean, the Mariners lost Andy McKay, who was the assistant GM, Tony Arnerich, who was the bullpen coach, and Christopher Negron, who's your first base outfield coach. I mean, those are names that have been there and have had impact, and I know you're happy for them moving on. How tough is it to replace those guys? And maybe for fans that aren't quite aware of their impact, just talk about maybe the impact they had.
Yeah, it's impossible to replace those guys. I could, start with Andy. Andy's been like a pillar of our organization. If you go to the mall, he's like our anchor store. He's our Nordstrom in terms of his impact organizationally and what he's done. I could look around at the organization, Pete Woodworth, Trent Blank, Chris Negron when he was here. Like, these are all Andy McKay hires. Andy is responsible for so many of the people that made a difference in player development and other departments, both in their hiring and in their sort of upbringing in baseball ops or in coaching. He's just a huge factor in what we've done, and I'm thrilled for Andy. He made a huge difference in my executive career and being a sounding board and making me smarter and I think a better leader in a lot of ways. And that's going to be really hard organizationally. I told him I'm still going to call him like 3 times a day just to check in. And I'm really happy for him to get the opportunity to go on the field in Cleveland. And then, with Chris and Tony, Tony's been here 9 years. I think Chris 5 or 6. That institutional knowledge, their feel, and just the quality of human that their new teams are getting is just off the charts. We were really lucky to have them for as long as we did. It was coming at some point. You can only have so many spots in the dugout. Only one person gets to be the bench coach, and for us, over the last year, to lose Carson Vitale to Miami to be the bench coach, and then Tony Arnerich to Cleveland to be their bench coach, and Chris Negron to Pittsburgh to be their bench coach. Like, that's a lot of loss of quality coaching and trust that you have organizationally. And we have to find a way to replace that. And we'll go through that process over the next week or 10 days. But I miss those guys every day. I'm also so happy for them. And also I think it's a good thing for the organization in some ways that, like, I wouldn't want to work for an organization where nobody ever called to ask permission to talk to your employees about the next job up. That doesn't speak well of the organization. I think we've built a place where people notice that we do things well. And when that happens, they usually call and ask for permission, and we have to be okay with, that bargain, which is that we get a lot from the employee, and at the end of the day, they get a platform to showcase what they can do. So it'll be tough to replace them. In some cases, impossible to replace them because of who they are and what they bring. But ultimately, I think it's a credit to the organization and not some sort of demerit or dark cloud hanging over us.
Justin, pretty cool last night that on top of T-Mobile, there's the JN, and I wonder if Josh noticed that. It was just a really cool idea. Whose idea was that, and did you see if Josh reacted to that or not?
So he did notice it. Jack Mossman got a text from Josh's wife Chantel that when they were at the hotel, they saw it and they thought it was awesome. The idea came from Trevor Gooby, who just does a ton of things to make it go around here, and a ton of credit to him. I was actually sitting with Trevor. There was an Eddie Vedder and Cameron Crowe book event last night, and we went to it together when the pictures started coming out. It was really cool to be with Trevor and to see the satisfaction on his face when people started talking about how cool it was, and Josh's wife had sent a picture of it, I'd like to think that, we do a lot to sort of put our players out there and be creative in ways that engage the fan base, whether that's with Trevor or our marketing team, with Greg Green, our PR team. They do a great job of engaging our fan base, and that was just another example of a cool idea that they brought to life.
Yeah, that was a really cool gesture. I can't imagine Josh not loving seeing that. Yeah. Hey, Justin, one more before we let you go. I said prior to the MVP vote that if Cal Raleigh played any other position other than catcher, that I would have voted for Aaron Judge. Aaron Judge had a remarkable year, and if Cal were a first baseman, second baseman, right fielder, what have you, then to me it was a no-brainer. The difference to me was what he does, what he's asked to do, the responsibility, the physical toll. It is just not comparable to me. So that was why I felt Cal deserved the MVP. I wasn't surprised by the vote. I'm just curious to get your reaction to it. Did you kind of feel like that's how it was going to go, or how did you feel when that vote came out?
I didn't really have a sense one way or the other. I thought it would be close, and it was close. And I don't, who am I to judge the way somebody votes for the MVP? These guys are both awesome. And I think whenever I get asked about it, I want to make sure to point out that I think both players are like MVP worthy and had awesome seasons. Aaron Judge is the best hitter in the world by not just a little bit. He's incredible. I don't relish whenever we have to face him. But I do think Cal was the MVP this year. I'm biased, and I know that. The amount of mental energy that Cal has to expend versus anybody that doesn't play that position it's really not comparable. And it's the physical toll is one thing, the foul tips, the squatting, the sort of the idea of switch hitting and working on both sides of the plate. But for me, it's the sort of the intellectual and mental toll that it takes to go catch that many games in the season, like, 125, 130 starts behind the plate, 130 pitches a night that you're responsible for dictating, throwing out runners, blocking balls, all that stuff. But just when a hitter goes up to the plate and makes an out or has a bad night and goes 0 for 4 with 2 strikeouts and leaves a runner on base a couple times, like there's a toll that it exacts on a person to not have come through that night. So that's a normal thing for every hitter. Cal goes through that, and Aaron Judge goes through that, and everybody else. The thing that Cal goes through is the 130 buttons he has to push a night. And if we give up a homer in the 7th inning of a game in July, that Cal feels like, oh man, I wish I would have called a fastball instead of a slider or vice versa. Mm-hmm. Like he has to live through that and put that behind him as well. And it's just not comparable to what anybody else has to deal with, both mentally and emotionally, to go through. And he's right back out there the next day, hitting 60 homers and, leading the league in RBIs and just doing things that nobody else has really ever done. So I just think it's hard to overstate how amazing a season Cal had. I didn't get a vote. If I had, I would have voted for Cal. Obviously, respect the kind of superhuman Aaron Judges, though.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. Look, Justin, always appreciate your candor and you giving us the time that you do. And let me just say congratulations on what was, for me, the most fun I've ever had covering the Mariners in all my years. It was an amazing season, and I absolutely cannot wait for spring training. You guys crushed it at the trade deadline. You crushed it by getting Josh locked up right out of the gate. I think fans are excited, and we can't wait to see what you guys have in store before spring training and getting the season going. Thank you so much, man.
Thanks. I really appreciate the nice words. It was the most fun I've ever had working for the Mariners, whatever it's worth. And I'd like to have even more fun next year. It's a great group. We're really lucky. And I think our community is recognizing of that like we're really lucky to have this community support us. And I think our players are really lucky to have the kind of fan base that we have. And I think it's a huge advantage to us when players get here, when they see what kind of awesome town they get to play in for 81 nights a year. It makes a big difference. So thank you to everyone for supporting us. And like I said, I hope next year's even better.